Hi, I'm Kortsch. I just really felt I wanted to respond to the most recent Bloomberg Businessweek issue, which you might be able to see here. And the front page has John Maynard Keynes on it. It's called "Stimulate This" with a big exclamation mark. And their main article is, and I've got it here, it's called, oh my goodness, would you like more red, etc. on a main article. It's called "Man of the Moment, Why John Maynard Keynes is Just the Economist We Need to Get the World's Economy Humming Again" by Peter Coy. I felt I just had to respond to this. Most of you have probably not read this. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to give you a couple of quotes directly from the article, and then I'll make just a few comments which I just felt I had to make. So here's right at the top. You notice I marked a few things. It says, Greece took its medicine as instructed and was rewarded with an unemployment rate of 26%. Isn't that wonderful? Well, that's awful. Portugal obeyed the budget rules. Its citizens are looking for jobs in Angola and Mozambique because there are so few at home. Germans are feeling anemic despite their massive trade surplus. Go a little bit lower. It says, but you know what? There's a doctor in the house and his prescriptions are more relevant than ever, even though he's been dead since 1946. You see, the symptoms, I'm still reading here, the symptoms of the Great Depression that he correctly diagnosed are back, though fortunately on a smaller scale. Chronic unemployment, deflation, currency wars, and beggar-thy-neighbor economic policies. I skip a paragraph. Keynes said that when companies don't want to invest and consumers don't want to spend, government must break the dangerous cycle by stepping up its own spending or cutting taxes, either of which will put more money in people's pockets. What this article basically says is, in times of crunch like right now, we're all Keynesians. We all believe that the government should push forward on the demand curve because we as normal human citizens, corporations, etc., are not able to do that anymore. Do I believe that? Well, I think most of you know that I come from a different system. I would rather see a system, a different monetary and banking system than what it is that we currently have. But within the current system, I agree with what it says. That this is really true. The problem is that we're all only half Keynesians. You see, this is the part that we forget. Quote, and I quote, I'm reading word for word, that is not, contrary to some of his critics, a recipe for ever-expanding government. Keynes said governments should run surpluses during boom times to pay off their debts and soak up excessive private demand. And this is what drives me crazy. During times of crunch, during times of difficulty, we all want a stimulus. We want the government to spend more. Basically, Keynes said initially it should be monetary policy. So until the interest rate is dropped down to zero, which currently we've had and we're going to have for some more long time, what we call ZIRP, the Zero Interest Rate Policy, ZIRP. Okay? At that point, monetary functions cease to work very well, and we need fiscal functions from the government. And so Keynes says, hey, we got to run some deficits. We got to somehow kick this bull out of the corral and get this guy moving. Here's the problem. Think of it as a spring. If you think of a spring and we pull it, it moves back and forth, which is a natural economic cycle that we end up having. But you pull that string too far and it disfigures and it will not move back and forth anymore. When will that point occur? That's really the question. So Keynes is saying that in good times, can we gather some surplus so that in bad times we can pay for that? Why is it that nobody seems to be Keynesian when there are good times? We all want to spend more, but when there are bad times, oh my goodness, yes, the government has to spend more money. We don't understand that what we're simply doing is clawing from the future for today, but will need to be paid back in the future. We do not create wealth out of nothing. Let's talk about QE just for a minute. All of the monetary policies ultimately end up creating wealth from something or someone else. Quantitative easing what it does is it builds up asset values. Okay? So what happens? We increase inequality. We take money essentially from the poor and give it to the rich. That's a little crass, but that's what happens. How about ZIRP, the zero interest rate policy? We're doing the same. What we're doing is we're taking money from the savers, the older people, and we're giving it to the spenders, most of whom tend to be the younger people. For the life of me, I can't understand why the AARP, which I believe is the largest voting bloc we have in our country here in the US, has never complained about this. So both of those structures, which is what we use from the Federal Reserve Bank, end up moving value, wealth, from one particular aspect of the economy to the other. So now Keynes is saying, let's do it with fiscal policy. Let's have the government run larger deficits. Well, yeah, I'm all for it in the current system if the capacity to spend those deficits come from savings. But you know what? They don't. So I want to complain about this article because it says, here's the man, here's the doctor with the answers. The only problem is that we refuse to store up for when those answers are ever needed. We are only Keynesians when the economy is bad. Give the economy good and oh my goodness, none of us want to be Keynesians anymore because that would mean we'd actually have to save. I trust this will be helpful to you. I'm Kortsch. All the best.